have.
Yes.
There are some survey questions that are going to be asked. Can you just offer a little bit of detail? What sorts of questions? What are you looking here from these?
Sure. So the survey, which will be completed in advance of the forum, gives residents, business owners, visitors the chance to rank their priorities, qualities that they're looking for in the next chief, and priorities that they want to see the police department focus on, as a way for us to weight the various strengths and weaknesses of the applicants that we expect to receive. The forum, which will also be informed by the survey, but is a separate process whereby the finalists will be on stage, probably at one of our school auditoriums, and have a chance for the general public to come and ask questions. They'll be asked to submit their questions, but their questions in their words, and the moderators, Cedric and Pablo, will then read those questions and put them directly to the finalists, so that we have a chance for community voices to be front and center in this process, but also have a chance to see the prospective finalists connect with the community, because that's an integral part of this job, and I think one of the great strengths of Chief Clements.
Mayor, are you aware of other major cities that have engaged in a process like this? And how has that worked out for them? And what has actually generated up from the community, if in fact that's happened?
Yeah, so this process has not happened in Providence before, but it has happened in other cities. And in the 2 weeks since I've been in office, we've been doing an extraordinary amount of work, and I want to thank my staff for that work, to research best practices from around the country in their chief selection processes. And we identified both the community survey and the public forum as models in other communities that we think would add real value to our process here in Providence.
And just a quick follow-up, were there any specific lessons or issues that carry a great deal of weight in cities like Providence in those processes?
I think the overarching lesson is that this is not a decision that can be made privately between the mayor and an outgoing chief. That in order to have broad-based community buy-in to the selection, which is integral to the success of the new chief and the department as a whole, that they need to be brought into the process throughout. And so I think this is an improvement over the past. I think it's a reflection of where we are today in policing in America, and I'm happy to have learned these lessons from other cities that have tried this elsewhere.
Mayor, how many finalists do you plan to make public?
We're not going to box ourselves into how many finalists make it to that last round, although it's my expectation that that's probably 3 to 5 finalists.
Do you place any importance on hiring from within, or conversely, looking outside?
Yeah, so the application is open to all, but I have stated and will restate a preference for someone who either is currently serving in the command staff or who has spent most of their career policing in Providence. I think that where we are as a department is in a good place. And so those in the command staff today and those who have learned to police in Providence do have an advantage in the process. But we're not closing the door to outside candidates. And I will say that I think it is actually one of the attributes of a good leader, and one of the reasons that Chief Clements has been so successful is that he's built a strong bench. And great leaders do that. They don't leave the ranks below them empty for their own security. Instead, they build up strong leaders and provide for a transition, because transitions happen.
Mayor, when you talk about quality of life crimes, I assume you're talking about ATVs, anything else, and how do we address those issues that have been really hard for police already to deal with?
Yeah, so quality of life crimes is, it's maybe a term of art, but what I think of are issues impacting the quality of life in our neighborhoods. And so ATVs and motorcycles is certainly probably top of that list. But it includes other noise complaints, things like loud music. There's general complaints around a lack of enforcement, around parking, and other kind of nuisance issues that degrade the quality of life in our neighborhoods and make it harder to live in our city. And so where we need to move as a department, and many of these things are a function of staffing and resource allocation, is to make sure that we have the bandwidth to do the enforcement, of the ordinances and statutes that are already on the books, but that just go unenforced and make it harder and harder, and sometimes can feel punitive to those who are law-abiding, who are following the rules, that do get the proper permits, that do adhere to the ordinances on the laws. And it's a downward spiral where when one party doesn't have to play by the rules, then everyone else feels like they don't need to either. And so that's what I mean by quality of life, and that's something that I'll be looking for innovative answers and strategies and solutions from some of these applicants to hear their thoughts about how we can do better.
Mayor, what's the time frame you're looking at, and is the chief going to be able to remain during this election process?
I expect this process will last about a month, and the chief is not yet in a position to disclose his next move or his start date, but I hope and expect that he will participate in most, if not all, of this process.
Have you met yet, Mayor, with any potential candidates for the job?
I have not met with any candidates from the job in the context of them expressing interest in the job. It's a small town. I've run into several people who I expect will apply, but I've had no conversations with any candidates about their interest or application.
Are a lot of people putting a bug in your ear about pay attention to this person or that person?
There's a lot of interest in this position, to be clear. And I think that's great. The reason there's a lot of interest in this position is because there's a lot of reasons to be proud of the Providence Police Department. And for many people for whom their entire career has been devoted to Providence, this is the pinnacle of their career.
You say you expect the process to take about a month. How long might it take to have somebody, do you have a target to have somebody on board by a certain date?
No, not necessarily. Obviously, if we were to select an internal candidate, that person could start as soon as the process were concluded. If it were someone working in another place, we'd have to work through whatever transition they needed.
Mayor, current force size versus your desired force size, and as a percentage of that, how many of that force would you like to see as boots on the ground officers on the street on patrol?
Sure. So I don't think that the mayor, any mayor, a politician should be single-handedly making decisions around what is the appropriate level of staffing. I think that I intend to rely on experts to help advise me on how much staffing we need. And so right now, that advisor is Chief Clements. It's been a little bit now, but at a public hearing maybe a year ago, he said that he thought he needed 450 officers to adequately police and patrol and provide safety to the city. Right now, we're authorized at 441, so we're not quite there yet. I will maintain that same orientation and work with whoever the new chief is to hear his advice or her advice on what is the right level of staffing to provide the protection and real community engagement necessary. I will add, because it's counterintuitive for some members of the community for whom additional police does not sound like a good idea to them. And I recognize and respect that point of view. But it is my strong opinion that if we don't have adequate staffing, we can't do real community engagement. And it's only through adequate staffing that our officers have the time and flexibility to attend church meetings, to attend community groups, to engage with the community in a meaningful way, to walk the beat, to restore the bicycle patrols. Those things take bodies, men and women in the Providence Police Department. And so I believe we will have better policing and better community engagement with adequate staffing.
Question, if I may, for Colonel Clements. You certainly are uniquely situated to help determine what are the necessary attributes that someone brings to the job. How are you approaching this?
So yes, thank you. And I think there will be, I know there is great interest, and there should be, because there is no greater job in this state, in this world. Being the police chief has been beyond the honor of a lifetime. There will be great interest, and a lot of people are talking to me about filling this role. And it'll be interesting how it plays out. I know the mayor is going about it the right way. I believe we built a culture of leadership in this police department. Many have gone on to be police chiefs, heads of security. I know the command staff that works with me now, they are fully capable, suitable, they're ready. They've been part of every bit of success we've garnered in the last 4 years, 10 years, 12 years. I think it's important for the next leader, as I did, to make this a better place than how you found it. The predecessor of the Providence Police Department re-engineered and took this police department to great levels. He really did, in many ways, re-engineer this police department. But even he would tell you, we took it to so much higher levels since then. And I would expect my successor to do the same. We've done some great things. There's always room to grow. And I anticipate I will assist the mayor in picking that next leader to bring us to the next level.
In your opinion, Colonel, does that person work on your command staff now?
Yes, we have great leadership under my command, and I do believe that. However, I think it's important, and it happened to me, where we open the process to make sure that we get it right, because it would validate the person who ends up standing here like me, leading this department. I know there's great leadership below me in the Providence Police Department, but in the end, it will validate the person that is chosen by Mayor Smiley.
And is your new job okay with waiting until February for you to go there?
Still waiting on that, and hopefully we have something to announce very soon, along with a date. But yes, and again, look, the mayor and his staff, I am overwhelmed by their response in me, in trying to retain me. I wouldn't be leaving this city and this department but for this wonderful opportunity. I want to thank Mayor Smiley for his graciousness, and many in this city that have reached out. But nothing lasts forever. That's what they say anyway. Very bittersweet, very.
Colonel, is there anything you would like to reflect on,
I'm going to save that. I'm going to keep today for the announcement on the next election, but certainly many have reached out for exit interviews, and once the announcement is made, absolutely, I'd love to speak about my 37 and a half years in this city that I love, in this police department, in the last going into year 12. And look, the average tenure of a chief of police in an American city is a little over 3 years. I'm starting year 12.
Therefore, you think it's time for a minority to be the chief of police in Providence, to look at the diversity that the city has?
I think that's important, to look at every aspect of the next leader of this police department. The city and the demographics of this city have changed significantly since when I came on the job, and you see that in the type of candidates we've chosen to come into the ranks of the Providence Police Department. We've changed that significantly. Not only locally, regionally, nationally, they have their eye on Providence and how did they do it. So is that important to consider? Absolutely.
Is the Seacon chief being considered in any way right now?
I'm sorry?
The Seacon chief, is he being considered?
We haven't even spoke about that. Right now, there are 0 candidates, 0. The announcement today kicks off those who may have an interest formally. A lot of people have, kicked the tires and thought about it and talked to me, but in the end, it'll be interesting to see who actually puts their hat in the ring.
Mayor, quick question. You mentioned communities in the city that might not be, we'll say enthused by growth and staffing levels. The same issue might be, or the same idea might be said about the issue of SROs, school resource officers. What's your current vision on that, and is that a vision that will have to be shared by the next chief? Is that a collaborative process?
Sure. So I have supported and will advocate for some changes to the SRO program, but I do think that it is an option that should still be available to our schools. So those changes are as follows. One, I think the principal in our schools should have an opportunity to decide whether or not an SRO is appropriate for their school or not, and also have a say in working with the police department on which SRO gets assigned to their school. Second, I want to make sure that our SROs are currently dressed in kind of Providence Police polos, that they remain non-uniformed, because I recognize and acknowledge the trauma that some students experience when they see a uniformed police officer walking into their school building. And so continuing to kind of dress down is, I think, progress towards addressing that goal. And then third, we need to do better training in the school itself, where there is an SRO, to make sure that the adults in the building, the principals and the teachers, know what the SRO is there to do and not to do. Because there's a real risk that when there is an SRO in the building and there's an incident in a classroom that could be resolved in the classroom with the teacher, it's sometimes too easy to just call the SRO from the front. And then you have law enforcement involvement on something that might have been resolved without law enforcement. And that's a function not of the SRO program, but of the training of the school administration and teachers in the building to know what that role is and is not. I do believe and have heard from parents who are strong supporters of the program, and I think that it is an excellent opportunity to actually build positive relationships between the police department and young people, to have a non-uniformed, youth services-oriented officer who's there to help build relationships in the long term. And so I'll be seeking to make these changes or modifications to the program, but I'm not willing to remove them carte blanche as some have advocated.
Have you
I have
expressed
time for
these
a few more
thoughts?
questions, guys.
Have you expressed these thoughts to the State Department of Education?
You know, I talked about them over the last year throughout the campaign, and it is one of many topics that are being discussed with RIDE and with PPSD, the Providence Public School District.
I just have a question,
Please.
just following up on that. We're going to have a new chief, but we also have a new mayor, and the chief is going to answer directly to you. So what can a new chief expect from you? How involved will you be with the police department and the chief?
So the new chief should expect that I will not be reaching in to make personnel decisions or in the department. We've made such great strides to depoliticize the Providence Police Department. I will maintain those standards. It is the chief's responsibility to make sure that personnel are managed, that promotions are made by merit, and those situations will remain as they are today, which are non-political and professional. I think that the city in general, the mayor and the city council has a role in setting some policy objectives and focus and priorities, and I expect to be involved in that respect. But it will be collaborative, and I will, you know, provide the leadership and the feedback from the residents about changes that we'd like to see or focuses like we've talked about earlier today. But then it's the department's job and the chief's job to help make those policies realistic and actionable and provide their insight into the realities of policing in Providence and in America today.
Once you have a chief, do you anticipate appointing a public safety commissioner, or might you retain that role?
So I am taking my time on the decision about whether or not the city of Providence needs a public safety commissioner. In cities across Rhode Island and in Providence's near past, we've gone periods of time without a commissioner. And it consumes quite a bit of resources. And so before we make that decision, the most important thing is that we find and hire an excellent chief. And then I'm going to take a little bit of time to see if there are gaps, if I think it's necessary or not. And honestly, I'm not sure yet. I don't want to rush that decision, and I think we can wait a little while before making it.
Well, one more question.
Last one.
Yeah, thank you. One quality of life issue that's been coming up recently is white supremacists that drops throughout the city, and not just the east side, but elsewhere. And is that something that the new department should be taking more seriously, or seriously, I mean, because it's...
Absolutely. By the way, I wouldn't classify hate crimes as a quality of life crime. I think it's far more serious than that. And the now multiple instances of white supremacy and anti-Semitism in our city is deeply troubling to me. The police department will and does take those crimes very seriously, and together the chief and I think the community as a whole will continue to speak out against every instance of hate and to reaffirm that Providence is a place where that is not welcome, that we are a diverse community welcoming of all, that we speak out against anti-Semitism in particular, which is a very alarming national trend. And so that is, of course, a priority for us, but it, in my mind, rises above a quality of life crime.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Any other questions?